Mitch Moore, head coach of the Iowa City High Little Hawks, joins us now. Coach, last week, huge win against Bettendorf, but it looks like last year. But you don't have to play Bettendorf in the playoffs this year. It's always a case, every team's different. What'd you do
Sure.
differently this week in getting ready for the first week of the playoffs?
Well, I think, last year it was, as a coach and 15 years of coaching, probably one of the hardest weeks you go through because you were really successful the week before against a team. You weren't going to replicate that because it was a really good football team. They were going to change. They had to. You didn't know what exactly you were supposed to change because you did it really good the week before. So from this standpoint, we've got a lot of film on these guys. They've got a lot of film on us. You pile that together. You watch as much film as you can. You come up with a calculated plan to be able to funnel that all down into what can you show your kids. And I keep stressing that to our own coaches. It's not about what we know this week, just like any other. It's about what our kids know. And so we've got to decipher that information really fast, get a lot of film, watched in our own head, and then kind of regurgitate that to the kids through film and through practice and through scout looks and all those things. So the one thing we know is Ankeny's going to do what they do well, right? I think, and they know that about us. Like, hey, you look at their successful plays on tape, the ones that are gaining a lot of yards, it's a pretty similar type play, right? Or it's a pretty similar guy with the ball, or a pretty similar type tackle guard combo, whatever that is. And it would be the same with us. And then defensively, they're guys that stick out. To be honest, I've been getting a lot of questions about certain guys on their defense. And to me, it's hard to stick out on that defense. They all play hard. And so, and that's with no disrespect to the guys that are really, really good players on that team and the Anderson kid and the DNs and all those things. But, man, they all play hard. So it's when people ask me who sticks out, it's like all 11, everybody they put on the field,
Guilty. I'm one of those that asked you that earlier this week. And
Yeah, not
thing,
just
but
certainly not just you, Paul, but you're right.
It's true. And, but the same can be said about your team. When I ask, who stands out, who's leaders, and you're like, no, it's all five, it's all three, it's all four in this spot. It is such a team game. But you got to admit, you got some guys that are pretty special players. I mean, quarterbacks always get a lot of the pub, but yours is pretty special.
Yeah, he is. I mean, and like we talked about the other day, I mean, he's this charismatic, really vibrant type, personality. He's a good leader. His dad's the principal of our school, and so there's a lot of things that they just provide our community, and that is kind of the story that everybody knows about the Bobby Bacon here. But like I told you the other day, like he's a talented quarterback. He's the best quarterback I've ever had throwing the football. He's a leader. He manages the game well, and like you said, the cuss word, the game manager, he does do that exceptionally well because he's got this personality that just keeps him calm and keeps him in the moment and where his feet are at. But he's got a skill set and he can put the ball on people. And I think the biggest thing he does within our huddle, between every 30 seconds, he provides this calmness and this confidence. And because he gets the job done and he gives everybody some confidence, he takes ownership. And he gives guys credit. So it's just, he's a really neat guy to coach. And then when that's one of your leaders, that's kind of how the personality of your team is, right? You've got this leader like this and he's doing things the right way and he does things a fun way. And so then that's kind of how your team bounces. So it's really fun to coach this team.
Well, I look at your schedule and, you start the year out of state with Joliet Catholic, a traditional power, and then Liberty, who's playing as the 1 seed this year. Your other loss to Linmar, who you could have just rode the bus over with if you wanted to. You guys could have shared on travel costs. But, I mean, your schedule is tough. And you said middle of the year was kind of a turning point for this team when you kind of started to get the identity. What do you think? How does a coach get that identity out on a Friday night, especially in a playoff game?
Yeah, I think you mentioned our schedule, and that's pretty calculated from 2 years in advance. Just like when we got here, it's like, I want to play Dalian. If you're going to go play in a state championship, you got to go play the team that's played 7 out of the last 8. So I wanted to play them right away and play them in our home field. And then when that series was over, hey, well, let's go play a team out of Illinois that's one of the best and win state championships and see how they get off the bus, see how they warm up, see how their coaches communicate with each other, see how they respond to adversity. And so going into that game, you want to give your team as much confidence as you can, but also not a false reality, right? Like, hey, this is a really good program, and not so much confidence that you should beat everything, but you should you should go into that game with a lot of respect, and no matter what happens. And so we came out of that game in a really good place, even though what the score was. And so then we played a Liberty team that certainly has matched their win-loss record, and a really, really good football team. Didn't think we played our best football game. And so it was a lot of adversity. You're 0-2, because now you got to question what's happened 2 weeks in a row in terms of what the scoreboard says. And so that was kind of that first turning point. Then we had some good wins. And then, like I said, I think when you beat a really good, tough-nosed Kennedy team at that point, and then you lost to a Linn-Mar team in which everybody took ownership for what they did. Everybody was, kind of embraced the fact that we did some really good things. You played with a really good football team, and now we got to go play the number one team next week. But how do we get better, and how do we prove, and how do we keep consistent, which we have been all year long? And so through all that, Paul, I think that's where our identity of who we are came out. There was some certain key moments, right? After you're 0-2, how are you going to respond? After you beat a really good Kennedy team, and then you go lose, beat a couple games, and then you lose to a Linn-Mar team that's ranked in the top 4 on the last second again, when you're kind of used to winning those games in a way, which is the weirdest thing you can say, but you are. And so then instead of the coaches talking in the locker room, we had our leaders talking. And it was a pivotal point 2 weeks ago that carried us last week. And the one thing about this moment coming up is we know the magnitude of the game. We know who we're playing. We know it's the big boys. It's as good as you're going to get in high school football in Iowa. But we've been put in those situations, right, a couple of times this year. We feel confident in.
Last question. What do you see as a key tonight for your team for a win?
Yeah, no, I think it's just it's played with great consistency and great poise on offense. It's playing relentless on defense, kind of to match the mantra of Ankeny Centennial and how they play defense. We got to match that, and then you always want to limit turnovers and create turnovers. You want to embrace the environment. And I think you really want to be competitive. I think some of the times you get in these moments and you hold back or you don't understand what the magnitude of the moment was leading into it. And so you're kind of you're playing with a little bit of hesitancy. And for us, I want our competitive nature to come out, I think we've got a lot of guys that embrace these moments, certainly as a coaching staff and some players, and it'll be fun. It's going to be fun. So be competitive, enjoy the moment, play with a poise on offense and kind of a relentless effort on defense.
It's November football. It doesn't get any better than this.
It doesn't get any better than this, right?
All right. I appreciate your time. That's Mitch Moore, head coach of the Iowa City High Little Hawks. Man, it's going to be – I always love saying that. It's always kind of fun. All right, Coach, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you having us.
Our pregame show continues after this on the Central Iowa Sports Network.